Hey, everybody. Welcome back. How was your weekend? You'll start to notice as we go that my space is getting a little bit crazy because we are packing, which means I'm like trying to go through everything and declutter and figure out. So there was a lot of craziness this weekend as I was like trying to record a couple of videos for Heart Breathings and get everything set up. So it was a little bit nuts. And as I was looking at the background earlier when I was about to go live, I was like, well, they're just going to have to enjoy this. You can see all my like lighting equipment is hanging out right there and stacks of notebooks, and it's just going to be crazy for a little bit. So how was your weekend? I hope it was good. I was sitting down to go through the chapter that we're reading today. And I realized, much to my, I think that when we had that break that I needed to take to finish the book, we got a little bit off on our episodes, and I had gone back through to like kind of like tweak them a little bit. And for some reason, we have 3 episodes left instead of 2. So my question is, at this point, do we want to go Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, and just read the way I have it? Or do we want to just read a little bit longer today and Wednesday so that we can finish on Wednesday and have our kind of like wrap up on Friday? So I know we've only got about 50 people on right now, but if you have a suggestion of what you would rather do, let me know. This next part of the book is a lot of information before the finale of this book, and it's very important information. So it's good to kind of, in some ways, good to kind of get it all out and just read a little bit longer. But these readings that we've done lately have been about 30 to 40 minutes of just me reading. So if that's been kind of like, it's kind of hard to pay attention, then let me know, because I don't want to go like 45 minutes or whatever and then have people being like, oh, I'm falling asleep listening to this. So let me know what you think. So far, I'm seeing people saying longer, longer, longer. So please speak up if you kind of feel like, oh, it's already too long. Just also, yeah, I saw some comments about it's a happy kind of clutter. It is happy clutter. It's like all beautiful, and it's, it's for good purpose, right? It's me trying to declutter some of that stuff and get everything where I want it to be. And I haven't gotten my tote yet, my rolling tote that is going to be my, container that everything has to fit in. If it doesn't fit in that container in my backpack, it's not going right. So LA says, have you printed out book 6 for the road? And I have. So I did kind of show it a little bit in yesterday's notebook challenge video. I'm just going to be storing it in one of these Hello Kitty folders right there. So it's probably actually sitting right there. You could probably see like that little stack of paper. That is it. But I have not had a chance to go through and figure out how many episodes that will be. But I think that Demons Forever will most likely be more like 15 or 16 episodes at least, because it is kind of a longer book. So I will keep you guys updated on that once I get it done. I will definitely let you know before Friday how many episodes that will be, just because we're going to need a little bit of a schedule, because we're going to start right away reading that book next week. So it's all good. Oh no, Rana says, I really needed this today. It's 9 p.m. and everything just didn't go right today. I feel like I've had a couple of those days lately too, and I am right there with you, giving you hugs virtually, because I hate those kind of days when just nothing goes right. Carrie says, if I have to leave to go back to work, I just finished listening later. Just to let you know, Carrie, Andrew is loving the Plants vs. Zombies books. And so we had to buy all the rest of them for him to read. So he has been reading all of them. There's like 29 books on Kindle or something. So luckily his regular Kindle is not color, but he is reading them on his iPad so that he doesn't have to get all the paperbacks, because we're obviously trying to cut down on what we're buying physically, but he is loving those. So thank you for the few that you did send to him because he has read them like 20 times. And so we were like, okay, let's get him some of the rest of them. So he's really enjoying that. Thank you. Ellie says, how are your allergies? I'm feeling a little bit better right now because I took some like more medicine to try to feel a little bit better. But Andrew's actually been suffering a little bit with his allergies. And I think it's just been kind of a bad couple days here in the Charleston area. I did kind of show a little sneak peek on my Heart Breathings Instagram stories, but I have set up my planner for the month of August. And I also am using my matching wallet. So I'm like extra matching today. And so I'm going to do a flip through of that coming up soon, but it's kind of sad because it's like the last time I'll get to set up my planners with like using all my stuff, like my laminator and everything else. So I am just trying to make the most of it right there. But that's kind of some of what I did this weekend. Also, we went through and packed up a few more boxes this weekend. We are doing a little bit of online shopping, trying to get everything that we've need for the car and other stuff like that. So it's been a pretty busy weekend. I hope you guys all had a good weekend. So Anisha says, I started listening to Red today. Did you guys hit the list with it? We did not. We did try, but we did not hit the list. We probably came pretty close because we had several thousand, 3,000 plus sales, but I think we needed probably 4,000 or 5,000. So we did not hit the list. So I am still listless in my career. So it's one of those crazy things that I've told this before. And by list, I mean like USA Today bestseller list. I joke because I have a really good friend, Brandy, who's never written a novel and got in on a short story collection. And she's a USA Today bestseller, but she's never actually published anything other than that one short story. And she's a USA Today bestseller. And I have sold over 750,000 books and I am not a USA Today bestseller. So that's kind of like, how much of a judge is that in terms of whether you're a successful author or not? Because you can have someone who was in a box set that got lucky or, I'm not trying to downplay, she downplays it too. She understands that it wasn't like she published a novel that hit the list or anything like that, but you can sell a lot of books and never hit that list. So don't let that be your judge of whether you're amazing and worthy, And of course, indie authors used to be able to hit the New York Times bestseller list a lot better. And now they've kind of blocked us from being able to hit the list. So, Kelly says, I feel like number 12 will be it, and there are considerations. Obviously, I don't want to talk too much because I want to get started reading so we don't go too much over, but I have said I'm not going to be using or utilizing pre-orders in the future because of all this mess that has happened, but I probably will still put book 12 up on pre-order, but I won't put it on pre-order before it's finished. I will wait until it's been through edits and it's ready to go and ready to publish, and then it will go up for a short pre-order. That way I can have a little bit of extra time to market the book and maybe try to hit the list, because the longer that it's on pre-order, the more chance it has to hit the list. So it's one of those kind of things. But when I first decided to indie publish back in 2010, you couldn't hit the list as an indie author. It just wasn't, they didn't allow self-published books on the list back then. So when I made that decision, I was just okay with never hitting that list. And then it became a possibility, but it's just never been something that I have been able to do. Vengeful Darkness, for example, sold something like 3,500 or 4,000 copies on pre-order and then over the first week. But some of those are international sales, and that's still not enough. Like 4,000 books is not enough most weeks to hit the USA Today. And it has to all be in the US. And you have to sell, sometimes 5,000 to 7,000 books in a week. And I just have never been able to do that. So maybe in the future, I don't know, we'll see, but I'm not going to base my success on it one way or another. But yeah, when you get the Netflix deal, it'll be on the list. I do feel like that will be true, that if I ever get, or when I ever get this Netflix deal, it will push people to want to grab the books, because that is always the case. So we're going to hold and cross our fingers for that for sure. Debbie says, I'm working hard for you, Sarah. I've mentioned to my Weight Watchers group and lots of friends. And truthfully, word of mouth is still one of the most valuable ways to sell books. And, especially with now that there are just so many millions of books to choose from, having someone recommend a book is one of the best ways to get your name out there. And so I appreciate it every single time someone shares. I really do. So we are going to read, and it is going to be like 13 pages plus today. So it's going to be a little bit of a long reading. So grab your drink if you need it. We are just going to go ahead and read long today and read long on Wednesday. Hopefully we will not go over the 5 o'clock time, but we're going to go ahead and get started reading. And then Wednesday will be the finale of the book, which includes one of the biggest twists of the whole series. So I cannot wait for you guys that are not, haven't read ahead to get to that point, because it's going to be fun. Today's episode is following what happened last week, which is that Harper and Jackson finally told each other the truth. He told the truth about his relationship with Leah that he was promised to her before he was even born, or right after she was born. And he never had any say in the matter, but that he never really loved her that way. He's always loved her as a friend, but she has loved him. And because of their relationship, like being promised together, that's why he couldn't let people know how he felt about Harper, because it would have put her life in danger, because everybody sees his loyalty as being to Leah. But now that's all out in the open, because Harper had to fight a hunter that was secretly let down into the underground by Jericho, one of their own council members. And everybody got a chance to see that Harper was willing to risk her life to save Andros's daughter and the people of the underground. So they've got a little bit more respect for her, or a lot more respect for her now, but they can't let her stay. So they're basically kicking her out to keep everybody safe. And so Jackson's like, well, I'm not letting her go. And Leah, in this very emotional moment with the council, says his duty is to the woman he loves and to his brother. And she allows him to go. She kind of makes that sacrifice and knows that that's what's best for him. So basically, before she leaves the council group, Harper does get a chance to tell them, like, instead of being enemies, we should try to work together, because there is a chance that we could defeat the order. And so we need to do that together. And so she kind of speaks her mind, but now they have to go. And so this is where we start back today. And today's episode is going to reveal some information that we've been waiting for the whole series. So kind of a little bit of an information overload in this one. So hang on to your hat. All right. So we are in chapter 50, Life Rarely Is. Breaking the news to Marianne was not easy. You've got to be kidding me, she shouted. You saved all their asses and they're kicking you out? Well, I'm going with you. She turned toward her room, but I grabbed her arm to stop her. We've been through this once already, haven't we? She scrunched her face up in barely suppressed anger. You can't go back out there with those things alone. I'm not going to be alone, I said. Jackson's coming with me. She shook her head. Then I'm definitely not staying here, she said. We came here together. We should leave together. I'm sorry, but you have to stay here, I said. The journey is going to be difficult enough without me worrying about you the whole time. You still aren't completely healed from your injuries. It's too risky. Her shoulders relaxed slightly and her bottom lip quivered. You have to go tonight? She asked. They won't even let you stay overnight to get your rest? I shook my head. No, they're afraid more hunters will show up if I stay, I said. I pulled her into my arms for a big hug. We'll be okay. Where will you go? She asked. I don't know, I said, but we'll figure it out. Maybe we'll go back to the cave or something for a few days. We haven't really had a chance to make a plan yet. This isn't fair. Life rarely is, I said, here or back home. How will I know where you are or how to reach you if I need to? She asked. Will you come back for me if you decide to go home? You can reach us with this, Jackson said. I hadn't even heard him come back into the room, but he was packed and ready to go. He handed something to Marianne, and when she opened her palm to study it, I saw that it was a tiny clear stone. How does it work? She asked. All you have to do is close your palm around the stone and think my name, he said. I have a matching stone with me, so I will hear you if you call for me. The only drawback is that you can only use it a handful of times before it loses its magic. Okay, she said, tucking it into her pocket. I'll only use it in case of emergency or something really important. I've asked Leah to watch out for you, he said, and Essex is going to take good care of you too. Marianne nodded, her blue eyes filling with tears. I love you guys, she said. The three of us joined in a group hug, and I wondered when, or if, I would ever see my dear friend again. Chapter 51, Guarded Secrets. Jackson took my hand and walked with me toward the grand hall. We had decided to spend the night in another cave Jackson knew from his childhood. Do you think we'll be able to make it there tonight? I asked. It's already so late and I can't stand that stupid obsidian forest. He smiled and squeezed my hand as we walked. The place where we came through to the underground is just one of many portals, he said. There are similar circles of black roses all over the northern kingdom. I asked Andros to find us a portal closer to the cave where I went to hide out. I took in a calming breath and felt the relief flood through me. I was so thankful to have him with me. I couldn't believe I'd almost left on my own. In the marketplace, a small group of shadow demons waited to say goodbye. I recognized the faces of some of the vendors and cafe owners I'd become friendly with over the past few weeks. Essex and his mother were there, some of Jackson's friends. As we passed by, they offered us food, water, and weapons. Bowing, we took each present, thanking them. Their gifts touched my heart. That they didn't blame me for the deaths of those 30 shadow demons eased my guilt. At the top of the main staircase, Andros and his family waited to say goodbye. Sasha jumped from her mother's grasp and threw her arms around my legs. I crouched down to give her a proper hug. I told my mother she shouldn't worry, that you would come and save me, she whispered. I smiled at her and kissed her tiny cheek. Aurelia hugged me and gave me a sweater. It might get cold where you're going, she said. Promise me you'll be careful. I nodded, knowing that no matter how careful we might be, the future wasn't entirely in our hands. It was Andros's gift that surprised me more than anything. With serious eyes, he handed me a tightly bundled package. What is this? I asked. When you first came here, Jackson told me you'd been looking for a clue about how to break the spell that binds Airden's soul and power to you, he said. I told him we had never heard of this spell, but I wasn't entirely honest. Chills ran up my arms. I clutched the package tight against my chest. The book you now hold has the information you've been looking for, he said. Then he turned to grasp Jackson's hand. Please, do not be angry at me for keeping this from you. You must understand that this information is one of our most closely guarded secrets, and down here, we still have some trust issues. Someday, we wanted to seek the items needed to break the spell and cross worlds in order to free our brothers and sisters. Harper, I now see that your destiny is tied to this book. It was waiting here for you, for this moment. May the suns and moon carry you safely through all your days and nights. For a moment, I couldn't move or speak or breathe. In my hands, I held the key to my own freedom and the freedom of thousands. It was a priceless gift that filled my heart with hope. Thank you, I managed, then threw my arms around him. Andros laughed and patted my back. You're welcome, he said. Don't let this information go to waste. We won't, Jackson said. We finished our goodbyes, and Andros walked us down the long hallway to the portal. He searched through a collection of stones and finally placed a new symbol into a square cubby in the wall. Jackson took my hand and moved us to stand just beneath the portal's opening. With a nod, he signaled that we were ready. Andros nodded back slowly, then placed his hand over the symbol. A familiar hum coursed through my body from feet to head. Then I fell upward, my body disassembling and passing through the cool soul stone. I forced myself to stay calm through the sudden darkness. When I reached the other side, the crisp air startled me. My hair blew back in the wind, lifting from my neck and sending a cool breeze straight through me. Disoriented, I closed my eyes, enjoying the feel of the wind while the world stopped spinning. Chapter 52, The Ring. Jackson's lips descended on mine, so warm. I leaned against him, enjoying this peaceful moment. "We should go," he said softly. I opened my eyes and looked around. We were standing at the top of a moonlit hill, the black roses circling us. Above our heads, the sky boasted 3 moons, one pink, one blue, and one lavender. "Weren't there only 2 moons before?" I asked. Jackson laughed and took my hand. "There are 7 moons total," he said. "How many you can see depends on the time of year. 3 moons means warm weather, sort of like summer here." "Summer sounds good to me," I said. "No snow in summer." We stepped out of the ring of roses and onto dark, gritty sand. The sand slipped beneath my feet, and I nearly lost my footing. Jackson held tight to me, keeping me from falling. Carefully, we made our way down the hill and onto a more flat, beach-like surface. In the distance, I could hear the sound of the sea. The cave took another half-hour to get to, and I spent the entire time looking over our shoulders to make sure we weren't being followed. Once we were inside, I was glad to be out of the sand and out of view. Jackson had picked up bits of driftwood along the way, and he immediately set to making a fire. Our no magic policy was in full effect, hoping not to alert any hunters of our presence. I was completely exhausted, but right now, nothing short of death could keep me from reading the book Andros had given me. As soon as the fire provided enough light for me to see by, I untied the package and lifted an old leather-bound book from the cloth. The leather was soft and warm, the binding badly cracked from age. A blue butterfly was embossed on the front cover. I traced the image with my fingertip, my teeth grinding together as I thought of the one family I knew with an affinity for butterflies, the Winters. Sarra had told me her ancestors were members of the Order of Shadows for a long time, but until this moment, I hadn't realized she meant they were founding members. Judging from the age of this tome, it was possible someone in the Winter family had been around since the beginning. The leather cracked as I opened the book. The pages were yellowed and worn, but thankfully the writing was all in neatly written English. I skimmed each page, searching for the information Andros had been talking about. The first several pages seemed to contain basic information about how to feel connected to your power, how to control a flame, how to move an object across the room. It wasn't until after the basics that things started to get interesting. "Look at this," I said to Jackson. "A witch may perform many spells on her own power, but with the collaboration of a shadow demon, a witch's power grows exponentially." Jackson sat next to me, taking part of the book into his lap so that it was shared between us. "I think we're looking at a witch's spell book of sorts," I said. "These read like lessons at first, right? I mean, these basic spells look like handwritten notes on how to perform simple things. But as you move further into the book, it becomes more complex, as if the witch was learning more as she advanced through the order or whatever it was that existed before the order. This may possibly be her private journal or something." Jackson flipped through several more of the pages, stopping when he saw a drawing of a ritual room with a portal. "What does it say here?" he asked as he drew another piece of wood on the fire. I read from the page. "After Magda's journey into the shadow world, my sisters and I have discovered a way to pull shadow demons through so that their power may be used as a type of fuel for our magic," I read. "The secret is in the gemstones found all over the shadow world. They are as common there as simple rocks, but they absorb magic like no stones we have ever seen. Using these stones, we have built a portal to the other side, which can only be controlled by the master of the stone." "The master of the stone?" Jackson asked, looking over the page. "That must be the person who controls the stone. What else? Read it out loud." "We are unsure how it works exactly, but the first stone we mined from the shadow world was a deep blue sapphire," the journal continued. "We found a location at the edge of town where the stone seemed to vibrate with a special power. There, we placed it into the ground, and here, after much experimenting, we created a spell that opened a gateway to the other side. Eloisa, the eldest, was the first to claim the title of master. After several months of trying different techniques, she finally chipped a small piece from the stone and created a powerful ring. She imbued this ring with a powerful spell designed to control a demon's power. The control spell worked beautifully. Within a week, she had returned home through the portal with a demon under her control. After many months, we developed a special spell that trapped this demon into her body. You wouldn't believe the effect. Eloisa is by far the most powerful witch in the history of this town, possibly the world. We now know there is no need to make a demon fall in love with you in order to join with his powers. With this new magic, we can summon the demons and make them into our very own personal energy pool without so much as asking their permission. Of course, many of the witches in our town do not approve of these techniques. They call us cruel and evil and say we are using dark magic, but I see it as survival of the fittest. The most powerful deserve the best, and we are, by far, the most powerful witches in the world. We have decided to call ourselves the Order of Shadows, since we now control these shadow demons, and soon we will have each created our very own demon gate. I, for one, am looking forward to feeling the rush of power Eloisa brags about ever since her demon entered her." I stopped there, my hands shaking. In my hands, I was holding one of the first accounts of the formation of the Order of Shadows. I wasn't familiar with the names Eloisa and Magda, and I was unsure exactly how many witches had been involved at the start of the order, but none of that was as important as understanding the origin of the demon gates and the purpose of the gemstones. I turned the page and froze. More drawings of familiar items. A dagger with a stone embedded in its hilt, a chalice, a gemstone necklace. The fourth item was a ring. Have you ever seen this ring?" I asked. Jackson shook his head. "The rest of these things we're obviously intimately familiar with," he said, "but the ring is new to me. Does it say anything else about it here?" I shook my head. There were no notes on this page, only drawings. It was on the next to last page that we finally found what we were looking for. "Here," I said excitedly. "This is it, Jackson. Oh my God." "What?" he asked, gripping the side of the book. I pointed to the text at the top of the page. "The magic that binds a prima to the first demon is one of the strongest binding spells I have ever performed. To reverse this magic, you must perform the original initiation spell backwards, using all of the same original items that were used in the creation of the prima's bond." "Harper, this is exactly what we've been looking for," Jackson said. He took the book into his lap and read the sentences again. Then he backed up a few pages. "Do we have the steps of the original initiation spell in here?" "Yes," I said, feeling giddy, my exhaustion forgotten. "It's a few pages back, closer to the drawings." I flipped back and pointed when we reached the ritual. "What does it say were the items used?" I asked. That's what we'll need to reverse the spell." The original portal stone, he said, which is easy since it's in the ritual room. The Master's Stone. Wait, isn't that the same thing? I asked, peering over his shoulder. I don't know, he said. I would assume so. Whoever wrote this book called the person in charge of the gate the Master of the Stone, so I would imagine the Master's Stone is the portal. Makes sense to me, I said. What else? The ritual dagger. Well, that's usually kept at Lydia Ashworth's house, I said. I saw it there the night of the homecoming dance, when Morgan died. I doubt it's still there, though, not after what happened to Mrs. Ashworth. I thought of how Priestess Winter's underlings had carried Lydia Ashworth away for her betrayal. If I had to guess, I would imagine all of those items had been given to Brooke's mother, Mrs. Harris. She's the one the order wanted as their new prima, so it only made sense. The necklace, Jackson said next. What happened to it? I reached up to my bare neck. They took it from me for the ritual, I said. They placed it inside the chalice. That's the next item, Jackson said. Who keeps the cup? I don't know, I said. I always assumed Mrs. Ashworth had that as well. So now it's either Mrs. Harris who has it or Priestess Winter. We'll hope for Mrs. Harris, he said. He traced his finger along the words, his lip moving as he read. The only other item mentioned here is the ring. I leaned back against the wall of the cave. The ring. Neither of us had ever seen this ritual item before. I was certain none of the other witches in Peachville had ever worn it. I would have noticed the stone. From the drawing, the stone was large and oval, definitely something that would draw attention. Is there any other information there about the ring? I asked. It's the only unknown item. He flipped carefully through each page, then shook his head. Nothing that I can see here, he said. I let my head fall back into my hands. We were so close, but without the ring, the information was useless. It's late, he said, closing the book. Tomorrow, we need to come up with a plan of where to go and how to stay safe out here on our own. You need to get some rest so you're fresh for whatever comes our way. For now, we should be safe here since we haven't cast any magic or left any kind of trail, but we can't stay in one place forever. It's too dangerous. I nodded. He was right. Without the safety of the underground, we would have to be on our guard at all times. What about you? I asked. I can survive with a lot less sleep than you can, he said. He pulled a blanket from his backpack and threw it over me. I'll be your pillow. I smiled and snuggled into the space between his arm and his chest. After all the excitement, I wasn't sure I'd be able to sleep. But after a few minutes of listening to the crackle of the fire and the soothing sound of the waves crashing on the shore just outside the cave, my eyes began to droop. I love you, I said sleepily. Despite the possible dangers that lay ahead, I felt as if I'd never been happier. Jackson kissed my forehead. I love you too. Chapter 53, Places of Great Power. Harper, wake up. The urgency in Jackson's tone scared the crap out of me. I bolted up, ready to fight or run. What happened? He sat near the fire holding the witch's journal, his green eyes bright with excitement. I think I found something, he said. I released a huge breath and waited for my shoulders to untense. I thought we were being attacked or something. He smiled. Not yet, he said. I cringed. He said it like it was only a matter of time. Come here, I want to show you something. I looked through the mouth of the cave and saw that it was very early morning. The suns were just coming up on the horizon. Have you been reading all night? Yes, he said. I didn't sleep. I wanted to stay up and make sure no one had followed us here. I nodded. So, what did you find? He shifted his weight and held the book out toward me. I sat down next to him and tilted my head to look at the open page. It's just one little section here, he said. He pointed to a passage near the middle of the book. The witch wrote about how the hunters were created and sent to the shadow world to choose demons and bring them through the portal. I skimmed it, not seeing what it was that he was so excited about. Here, he said. He pulled the book back toward him and read. Eloisa was reluctant to give up her favorite bauble, afraid it would be lost forever. But in order to create more demon gates from the blue stone, we needed the ring to stay in the shadow world as a sort of anchor. The ring? I said. It's here? It has to be, Jackson said. From reading, here's what I learned. Originally, there was only one demon gate per sister and one gate per gemstone. One blue, that was the first. Red, yellow, green, purple. And diamond followed? I listened, my body humming with excitement. But after the Order had created those original gates, they got greedy. They wanted to expand, he said. They started looking for ways to open more gates of each corresponding stone, but at first they failed. None of the new gates would stay open. Then they discovered that the ring was the key. Somehow the power of the ring is that it acts as an anchor, connecting all of the blue gates together and so on. I tried to put it all together in my mind. Peachville was a blue gate, but it definitely wasn't the first one. There had to be at least 50 or more blue gates in the human world by now. The same was probably true of all the other stones as well. Does that mean if we find the ring, we can close all of the portals? I asked. I'm not sure, he said. I think the demon gates themselves will still exist, but the portals there won't open anymore if the ring is brought back to the human world. This is huge, I said. We could cripple the Order and keep them from pulling any more demons through. Does it say where the ring is in the shadow world? No, he said, not exactly. It only says that the rings were hidden in places of great power here in the shadow world. Places where each stone would draw power from sister stones. I'm not sure what that means. We were so close to something big. With the ring, we might not be able to close the gates for good, but we could keep the Order from opening them to bring more demons through. It would be a huge victory. What about the other items? I asked. Does the journal say how each of those is important to the initiation spell? From what I understand, each demon gate has its own chalice, dagger, necklace, and portal stone, he said, but the rings are rare. Only one exists per colored gemstone. An excited chill ran through my body. Then we have to find it. Chapter 54. This is what the Order of Shadows does. Jackson caught fresh fish for breakfast and cooked them on the fire. I had never been one to like fish, but this was delicious, almost sweet. This is the first time you've ever cooked for me, I teased. Not quite as romantic as it could have been, I guess, he said, holding up a bright green fish head. But it'll do. I smiled and shook my head. I wish we could stay here, I said. It's happy here, like we could just forget the rest of the world. He looked out at the sea beyond the cave. If we make it through this mess, I promise I'll bring you back here and we can stay as long as you want. If we make it through. It's a deal, I said, but what's our plan until then? I remembered this vendor when I was a little boy, he said. My father used to take us there when he had business in the smaller villages. The shop was full of little trinkets, mostly junk really, but I remember this guy had a thing for rocks. He had a collection on display and was always looking to trade for rare gemstones or unique rocks. Do you think he might know something about the blue stones? It's worth a shot, right? Jackson finished the fish and threw the scraps into the fire. This was a long time ago, so I guess it's possible the shop isn't there anymore, but I'd like to try. How far away is it? I asked. Maybe a day's journey at the most, he said. It's very close to the borderlands between the north and south. We should get moving then, I said. I stood and packed my blanket and things back into my bag while Jackson put out the fire. Within 10 minutes, we were back out in the open. The carefree joy I'd felt in the safety of the cave was replaced by tension and worry. We had to keep an eye out for sentinels, hunters, and anyone who might want to harm us. We trudged through sand for about 20 minutes before we finally reached a rough dirt road. For most of the journey, we didn't run into any other demons. The road to the south had stayed pretty deserted since the two kings had become such rivals. Now, most of the cities along the borderlands had fallen into poverty. Somewhere just north of the vendor's city, we came across a small collection of thatched homes. "Should we find another way around?" I asked. Jackson stopped and looked around. Off to either side of the road were rough patches of woods or hills. "We'll waste a lot of time going around," he said. "But what if someone here is affiliated with the Order or has a problem with humans?" I asked. "Are you sure it's safe to just walk through?" Jackson took my hand. "I doubt anyone here has any love for the Order of Shadows," he said. "Come on. If anyone asks about you, I'll tell them you're an enemy of the Order. I think it'll be fine." I hesitated. There were about 6 houses still standing in what might have been a flourishing village once. It was difficult to say if anyone still lived there at all, but what if they were dangerous? I wasn't in the mood to get into a fight of more than 6 against 2. I forced my feet to move. I'd faced much uglier fears lately, so I would just have to face whatever came our way here in this little village. We made it past the first set of houses without seeing any movement or indication of life left in the village. Then, as we passed the 4th home, I saw a flicker of movement just inside the door. I clutched Jackson's hand tighter and tilted my head toward the house. Jackson kept walking, but turned his head to look. I surveyed the remaining houses, my body tense and my hand moving toward the silver dagger hooked to my belt. "Wait," Jackson whispered. He stopped and turned toward the 4th hut. "Look." I turned, not knowing what to expect. When my eyes landed on the small child standing in the doorway, I gasped and took my hand off the dagger. The boy was dirty-faced and wild-eyed. He wore no shoes or shirt, only a dirty pair of pants that looked like they hadn't been changed in months. Something about his eyes broke my heart. I released Jackson's hand and stepped toward the boy. Scared, he ran back into his house. I moved to position myself right in front of the door so he could see me, but I was careful not to get too close. "I won't hurt you," I said. I got down on my knees and peered into the darkness of his little hut. I could see that the boy was just inside the door, staring at me and sucking his thumb. He couldn't have been more than 4 years old in human years. I had no idea how that translated to Shadow Demon years, but he was just a child either way. I shrugged out of my backpack and found a pack of food and a bottle of water. I held them out toward him. "Are you hungry?" I asked. "It's okay, we're friends." The boy looked from me to Jackson and back again. He shuffled forward, stepping into the sunlight. "Are you alone here?" Jackson asked. The boy stared up at Jackson, then nodded slowly. I looked around again, wondering why such a small child would be alone in a place like this. What had happened here? I set the food down on the ground and backed away. Slowly, the boy walked forward and snatched it up, then hurried back toward the safety of his house. "How does something like this happen?" I asked Jackson. His expression grew dark. "This is what the Order of Shadows does to my world." Chapter 55, We Should Go South. We spent nearly an hour trying to coax the boy from his hiding place, but nothing we could do would make him trust a human. In the end, we left him a stack of food and water and moved on toward the vendor's city near the border. We finally arrived just before nightfall. Jackson shook his head. "This is the place," he said, "but it looks nothing like I remember from my childhood." The village was much bigger than any other place we'd come across that day, but it was every bit as run down. All of the buildings were in disrepair, and the people who walked the streets wore tattered clothes. It reminded me of a ghost town from the Old West. How does a place get like this when there's so much magic in this world? I asked. I mean, can't they just create new clothes and fix their houses with their magic? It's not that easy, Jackson said. Magic may come from within, but it isn't free. Not really. Performing magic is always a trade-off. You know that from getting sick when you were first learning to cast. Here in the shadow world, the more these demons use their magic, the more attractive they become to the hunters. Once a town builds up and becomes successful and powerful, the order comes knocking, wanting to take advantage of the most powerful demons in the area. The only places safe from this are the underground and the King's City, places where there are guards and safety nets. I looked around, feeling nothing but sadness for these shadow demons. Is it safe for me to come in here with you? I asked. I don't want my presence to make anyone feel nervous or upset. I'm not about to leave you somewhere alone, he said. Just stay by my side. It'll be fine. We left the road and entered through the center of town. Thankfully, it was almost nightfall, and most of the town's residents had already gone home or retired for the evening. I could only hope the vendor we needed was still open. Otherwise, we'd have to find some place nearby to camp for the night. The few demons milling about stared at me with cautious, curious looks, but no one spoke or threatened us. Jackson led us past a muddy fountain and a few closed carts, down a side alley, and finally to the door of a light gray building. This is it, he said. Fingers crossed this guy is still here. He knocked on the door and waited. I bit my lips, so nervous. So far, this was our only lead. We needed for this guy to tell us something useful. Footsteps sounded on the other side of the door, and when it flew open, a beautiful woman with amber hair and chocolatey brown eyes opened the door. Yes? She asked. Her smile faded when she looked at me, and I noticed a slight tremble in her hands. She backed away and called out to her father. Jackson and I exchanged hopeful looks. An older man came to the door, but Jackson's shoulders slumped in disappointment. May I help you? The man said. We don't want any trouble here. Please excuse me, Jackson said. I know it's getting late, but my friend and I are looking for a shop owner who used to have a store here in this house. He collected rocks. The man studied Jackson's face, trying to decide whether to trust him. What do you want with this shop owner? My father used to bring me and my twin brother here when I was younger, Jackson said. I remembered the gemstone and rock collection and had a few questions about it. Please, if you know where I can find this man, it's very important that I speak with him. We simply come for information. The young woman stepped closer to the door, then whispered something in her father's ear. The old man nodded and opened the door wider, inviting us in. Jackson thanked him and stepped inside. The four of us sat down at a large harvest table in the corner of the room. The man you speak of was my father. He moved on many years ago when my mate and I decided to have a child. I remember you and your brother, children of the king's advisor. My father had great respect for your dad. I still have his collection of rocks, and I will help you however I can. Jackson bowed his head in gratitude. Thank you, he said. May I see the gemstones your father collected? The man nodded toward his daughter, and she stepped away from the table, returning a few moments later with a large box. She laid it on the table between us. This is a complete collection of his best quality of every colored gemstone that exists in the shadow world, the man said. He opened the top of the box and presented its contents one at a time, laying them out on the table. Blue, red, green, white, orange, purple, and yellow, 7 distinct stones. But the witch's journal had only mentioned 6. I wondered why the order never used the orange stones. Are some of these more rare than others? I asked. I picked up the blue stone. It was exactly the same color as the stone in my mother's necklace. Almost sapphire, but not quite as dark. Almost topaz, but not as light. Somewhere in between. Oh, yes, the man said. Like the one you're holding in your hand. You can find them here in the Northern Kingdom if you're lucky, but most of the blue stones come from the south. Of course, trade between the borders is forbidden, so you don't see many of the blue stones here on this side. I sucked in a shaky breath. The blue stones were in the south. How much do you know about the magical properties of these stones? Jackson asked. The man picked up the purple stone and stared at it as if the stone had the answers he was looking for. Gemstones absorb magic easily, holding on to specific types of energy. That's why we use them so often for sources of light or communication. What if I wanted to take one of these stones to the place where it would be at its most powerful? Jackson asked. Is there a place where they would have extra power? I held my breath, hoping this man had an answer. He thought for a minute, scratching the side of his temple. My father used to speak of a mine, he said, a quarry, in a way, a collection of same-colored stones where each one's power amplified the rest. That might be the kind of place you're talking about. Jackson's eyes met mine for a split second, and I could see the excitement burning there. Do you know where we could find a place like that? I asked. A quarry? The man shook his head and shrugged. I'm not certain, he said. Supposedly, there's at least one for each gemstone somewhere in the world. What about the blue stones in particular? Jackson asked. If such a place exists, it would be in the Southern Kingdom, the man said. He rose from his seat, holding up his finger as if he just remembered something. He came back with an old ledger. He opened it and ran his finger down the page until he found the entry he'd been searching for. Ah, he said, here. Back in the days, before the borders closed, my father used to have a friend on the other side who knew a lot about these stones. They used to trade back and forth, comparing color and clarity. I have no idea if this friend is still alive or if you'd be able to find him, but it's better than nothing. Still, I don't recommend trying to cross through the borderlands. Why not? I asked. The borderlands are extremely dangerous, the man said. No magic can be cast there, and there are tales of giant monsters that guard the path to the south. Besides, if the Southern King discovers a northerner on his land, he will show no mercy. Outside, it had begun to rain. I could hear it pounding against the roof of the small house. I had so many questions about how this rivalry between the demons of the north and south had gotten started, but it was late, and we'd already asked so much of this man and his daughter. Thank you for all your help, I said. We sincerely appreciate it. The daughter turned to me, her eyes full of questions. Tell me, what is a young human girl like you doing in our world? It's very rare for us to see a human here. I'm here looking for answers, I said. About what? She asked. I paused. I didn't want to get into a discussion about the order. Andros had said we should be careful to put our trust in anyone. Answers about who I am? I said instead. About how to become something different? The girl seemed to accept my answer. She nodded and placed the stones back into the box. When she stood, we all stood with her. I gathered my things and strapped my backpack onto my back. No, the old man said, please stay with us for the night. We don't have more to offer than a couple of blankets and a hard floor, but it's better than being out in the elements on a night like this. Thank you, Jackson said. We would appreciate a place to sleep, and we'll be out of your way first thing in the morning. No bother, the man said. After he and his daughter had moved into the back rooms to sleep, Jackson and I fixed our beds on the floor of the main room. In hushed whispers, we discussed what the man had said about the stones. What do you think we should do? Jackson asked, his eyes meeting mine in the darkness. We should go south, I said. He nodded, kissed my cheek, then turned over to sleep. I cuddled up next to him, but kept my eyes wide open. We were already in danger. Was going to the Southern Kingdom really the best idea? And yet, I hadn't hesitated when he asked me what we should do. It was really the only logical choice. We'd come too far and risked too much to stop now. Hours later, sleep finally found me, bringing dreams of borderland monsters and rival demons. So not so much of a dun dun dun, but a little bit of a rival demons moment there. There's the title. So we have Wednesday's episode will be about as long, maybe just a couple pages longer than that, and then we will be at the end of the book. So, okay. Lots of little things happening in this particular episode. So we have Andros has a book that they believe has the answer. This is how you reverse getting a Prima and her demon bonded out. Now there's information here, but there's not everything that they need to know because they don't know where this ring is for sure. And there's other little things but they have that initiation ritual. So if they can get all these items together, I feel like, for those of you that have read Vengeful Darkness, you'll start to feel this in that book as well. When I was originally writing this series, this book for me was the next to last book. So I knew when I was writing this that I had to start setting things up for the finale, for how we end this particular series. And so it's kind of like what you get in this moment for this book, what in this episode, this is kind of setting up now what their tasks are going to be to try to defeat the Order or to free Erden. And it's been several books now that we know that that's kind of like what Harper most wants to do, is not only free herself, but as soon as she found out that there were demons involved and that they were living as slaves, she's trying to free them as well. In particular, of course, Jackson's brother, because it'll be hard for them to be together unless he's free. So there's been that kind of like item on the to-do list in terms of the storyline for a long time. So this becomes the first kind of unlocking of, this is the place where we are about to, get our list of how we defeat the Order and can we do it, So that is a similar type of thing. Like when you're starting to write those next to last books, you kind of have to set things up. Now there are things in this particular episode and in this book in particular that I've talked about before that kind of were, because I don't plot things out all the way to the end, I'm just kind of writing things in terms of the whole series. Like I didn't even know at this point there was going to be an entire next series based on this whole thing. There are things that didn't ever become that important. Like, for example, at least it hasn't yet. Who knows what'll happen in this final book or if there will be spinoff things, but they kind of mention, like Jackson mentioned something about like, it's unclear, but maybe there are diamond portals. That kind of stuff doesn't come up as much for a very long time. And then these orange stones, which you would imagine. So you've got like sapphire, emerald, ruby, citrine, amethyst, but then it's like, what are these orange stones? Is it, carnelian? Is it sunstone? Like what is the stone there and why do they never use them? I don't know. It never really gets mentioned again. So there have been times when I've wondered if I should go back and like edit some of that stuff out or just leave it in because maybe it'll become important at some point. But this is kind of the thing. It's like people always ask like, how much of this did you have planned in advance? And I didn't. So I didn't know if the orange stone would ever become important, but it just never came back up. And that's just the way of writing when you are kind of writing one book at a time. So it's kind of interesting. And JD had said, are there physical or visible differences between demons and humans? And I have kind of talked about this to address it a little bit because I really wondered when I started this particular book in the series, and knew that they would spend the whole book in the shadow world of, do I want them to look the same or not the same? And I didn't want to be like building up a romance between Harper and Jackson and having him look like a different creature, that just didn't resonate right with me. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to have them make a potion for her that looks, so she and Marianne drink it at the very beginning of the book, that makes them see shadow demons as humans, right, in their human form. But looking back on it from where I am now, whenever I see them, I just see them as human, right? And they wear dresses and they do, all the things. So I really feel like if I were to go back and sort of fix some things, or if it becomes a movie or a TV or anything like that, they will just be either humans or they're in their shadow form, but they would be humans who can, like, their demon form would just be like a human look, or else the smoke, like the demon smoke. So I don't think that I would have them be like different looking creatures if, and of course I can always fix that by having it just be like, this is the way she sees them because this potion like altered the way they look forever. But I don't know. It's one of those kind of tough things that you have to decide as an author. And it's like, oh, maybe I could go back and make that a little bit better. But some really good information here that kind of is going to be part of what leads you into the next book as well. But there is still more to come. So we have maybe about 14 pages to read on Wednesday, and then we will be done with this book. And then Friday, we will do a coffee chat where we'll kind of wrap things up, and you can ask questions about this particular book or just any questions in general. And then next week, we will start right back up where we left off. Demons Forever, just like this book, starts exactly in the moment that that this book ends. So they are like literally right there at the same exact moment. So it'll be seamless transition from one to the other. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. It's like, oh, there's Andrew. I could hear you up there. I don't know if you guys could hear him or not, but I could hear him on his gaming stuff. So you say hi to everybody.
Hi.
We are getting Andrew's homeschool stuff set up, and we applied for a homeschool association and so forth. So we're getting it. What are you doing? You got a sweater on? Are you cold? You want to show everybody your new shoes? We went and got Evie some new shoes, and it was so funny. We got these little purple Crocs. We went to get everybody new shoes before our trip. And we were trying different little sandals and things on her. And when we put these on her, she just like went running away. My shoes, my shoes. So these were her favorite things, these little Crocs. Hi, baby. I like your. Yeah, you can sit down.
Okay.
Okay.
You can sit down, Mommy.
Everybody likes your shirt, Andrew. Your dab.
Okay.
He's disappearing. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. So we'll kind of see how, so there's another show. I haven't seen the Grimm show. So that's how humans and Grimm see them. So yeah, it might be kind of interesting to see how that plays out in a TV series eventually at some point. So we went a little bit over time, but we are going to say goodbye now. Are you asking your questions? But we will see you guys on Wednesday for the finale. And on Wednesday, I am going to be giving away a couple of paperbacks and maybe a t-shirt too. So I will see you guys on Wednesday, and then Friday will be our coffee chat. So at that point, I will definitely give you guys the schedule for Demons Forever, because it's going to be cool. It's going to take us a little bit of time to watch. So yeah, so we're Bitmans and Canons. I'm the only Canon technically, or the Bitmans. It's all good either way. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to hit the like button on your way out, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed this episode. Bye.